Hi everybody, it's Jess, your go-to YouTube dance commentator, and we are here taking a look at the second round of the IDL 2026 Vancouver series. Now, why am I not looking at round one? It is because they are currently trying to swap out the music due to copyright issues with Brotherhood's round one set. So I want to look at all the round ones in one go, which is why we're just going to focus on round twos, because we can still have a lot to cover and a lot of things to appreciate and enjoy about the sets without having round one information. So I'm ready to dive in. I hope you guys are. Let's go. Okay. And if you don't know by now, I don't react to wide cams. So if you were expecting that, my apologies. That's what the live stream's for. But for these, because we're reviewing, I'm focusing on what we need to look at. and first place. Okay. So I'm gonna bring over, if we're okay with it, the spreadsheet. I mean, it's not really a spreadsheet, but it is a score sheet, so we'll give it that. Okay, would I have kept it in the same order? Now seeing them in the wide shots, I think I probably would have gone more on the Jam Republic being second, 1 million being third. There are a couple categories that I do find interesting though, such as the projection side and how spacing was equal across the board. Does that mean that every judge scored it the exact same? Good chance that some judges scored a team higher and lower and then it equaled out to that, because remember, this is the average score. And then seeing here the musicality side and then staging, I also thought was interesting. I get this one here. And then complexity, that also makes sense. And I had mentioned how Jam Republic was riding an interesting line, a risk, by having a lower BPM to operate from. And then the athletics, this one would be very interesting to talk about, specifically when we tackle the round ones. This one, I think we had more styles represented, so the stylistic athleticism was more in tune with what we were seeing in the styles being justified. But the first round, I think, we'll really be able to have fun with that category and this one here, right? So it is interesting how 1 Mil and Jam Republic had similar technical, like technique and authenticity, because I would lean that as well. So this is cool. So I'm ready to kind of dive in. If you guys are, we're going to start with 1 million. So based on, I'm probably going to pull that sheet back up, but I'm going to have it more on my corner here. All right. So taking a look, we're going to keep these pretty broad, not going to dive super deep into them, but if you are a team who wants to reach out, you're curious about more thoughts outside of this, just let me know and I will do my best to be helpful. So from the top of this, their highest categories looks like, let me actually take a look to see what they scored highest in. Projection and stamina, followed by, looks like, technique and authenticity. Okay. Projection absolutely makes sense. I like the opposition that we're seeing there. You notice that our range on our cleanliness could improve on that. The kit bop wasn't complete, but we did make it work in the feature. So let's actually talk about that moment here. Because as we prep it, having to deal with 90 degree, it looks like we were supposed to do an unassisted kip up, but we did bleed it through and compensate for it, but it did look enough of a, I don't think that was supposed to happen. So I like that we started from back to front. This little pony with a shoulder was cool. We're doing pretty good with the song. Now, I did have somebody ask, 1 Million used the same song that we heard from Royal Family in the first round. Is that a deduction? Absolutely not. You are allowed to use music that an opponent has. You do end up seeing that in the GRV versus Brotherhood match, where they used a little bit of Jealous Type as a sense of a dig. GRV did to Brotherhood, but that's an entirely different topic that we're going to get into, right? Lots of fun on that one. But no, I don't think that they would have received a deduction. Do you run a risk because we've just been saturated in an entire perspective of movement to the track? Sure. And especially if you've seen multiple creatives tackle this track in their own perspective, like our judging panel has been well versed in many different circuits and how they look at things. There's a chance that your creativity score could go down or your complexity could go down because there are a lot of moments in the track that you can't take advantage of. So you're kind of combating that as well. So they pull through. The marshes are fun there. Using our, it's honestly, I'd say spacing on this one is pretty okay in the beginning, but it really starts to get a little bit messy near that second half to the end. Now, if you notice, you have a lot of members have their shirt tucked up, and then they have some with their shirts down. Will that affect range, meaning how A to B of a move looks? Yes, it does, because of how the garment gets handled. Also, I do notice a lot of members of the team really had an individual perspective when they were projecting. Does that work against you? I would say on the cleanliness side, it absolutely can, but it can help on projection. But we'll talk about that in a second when we see that. So we have the fanning here. These two groups, they're doing the same thing, but they don't match in terms of the formation style as well as the spacing. So I can see how that may not have worked well for them in that category, but they did do pretty well in the staging spot, but the spacing could have been affected. So notice here how we have these ponies going on, and then you have your group over here. The front cam showed this as a really full shot for us, but does this leave room of emptiness going on, and you're relying a lot on a small number of people to justify a lot of categories? Yes, which is why I would say a component when you get to Brotherhood's routine that I think they did very well was they used their dancers a lot on stage, and they don't go off stage too often, but they've always done that. That's something I've noticed in their track record. So that could be an area of opportunity for not only 1 mil, but any other team that tends to go off to have these small groups. We are missing so many opportunities of having more dancers showcase levels, polyrhythm through delegation, things like that. The split is fun. I do believe this dancer right here, shout out to her, she ended up, I think, in rehearsal, she fell. So I'm glad that we were able to make that a nice complete moment so they can really give their best here. Now, we've seen that particular pocket of timing with the lower body earlier on when they were partners with the level change in the beginning of the small group. That still looked fun. It was nice. Then you have this dig going in. The timing could absolutely improve. Also, the direction of our torsos and how we're projecting that moment and movement. Even here, notice that some of our dancers, they're catering it more to the back, more to the side, and also you see the focus is different. That is going to affect your cleanliness for sure. The levels are really fun there, are nice. And then we end up accenting high mid. We heel toe on it too. The accent or the gesture of the hand I think is really fun there. The pas de bourrée is nice. Now that was interesting. I'm curious if that was supposed to be a feature moment, because that's what I was noticing, right? So we hop it. So that was just a hiccup. It did look like a feature, but because we ended up seeing it about 4 counts after, most likely that was a unison section that wasn't very unison. So that was going to affect your cleanliness. Yep, that pas de bourrée again. The little head nod was fun. Now, looking at seams, they scored second place in complexity. They have complexity in their groups that I've noticed in their timings. They have the BPM and a lot of music. They can go into their advantage here. It does look like they scored the lowest out of the 3 teams with their musicality. Let's talk about why. A good question you could ask yourself, which does go back to my previous point about when you have a judge panel or when you have a song that many people have approached in movement, you can ride a very predictable line where if you're hitting with a certain type of intensity to predictable parts of the music that have already been saturated with perspective, then you could run into a lack of creativity and your musicality can falter too because it's a standard in how one would interpret the track, if that makes sense. Now, once again, everything I'm saying is subjective in nature because you're going off of the scope of your judge. Even though we have a criteria list that can really try to create an objective scope for a judge to operate in, the guardrails are really, really nice, and I love the panels that have been selected thus far. You are still going to have subjectiveness because you're dealing with humans, right? Just like you're having humans judge humans, so there's going to be things that are missed and things that are caught that another judge may not catch. Does that make sense? And I think that's okay. And it's also okay as a side note too, as we talk about points, it's okay to talk about the points in the context of the actual series, but I am not one to want to use, okay, well, so this team scored this in the New York series and then they scored this in this series. Why? I think part of it comes from when you have a different panel that are learning the criteria and they're calibrating to the criteria, it's going to look different, right? Like how they're going to, actually use the criteria is going to be different than another series. I think that's going to get regulated over time, and I think they're doing a fantastic job, especially considering this is the very first season of the professional league here. But that's why you're not going to hear me say, well, 1 mil, they score lower or higher than they did in New York. I don't think that means that they're doing better or worse than they did in the past. It's kind of my point. Okay, we're going to move on from there. But this is the moment I was talking about. Notice that we have some individuality. Can this cost you? I do think to a degree, if you're wanting to have your projection, like they're very much projecting here, but it's more subdued here, right? So it doesn't look as balanced on that. The accent there, timing could have improved, I would think. I like the levels there. We drop it through. We swim the arm around, bringing it up, rock it back. I like the add-on from that. Switch off on the fetus, cool. Then I like the knock, and then we have the isolation coming in the group. I do like these types of moments. Do I think we could have really entertained full member usage leading up to this? Yes. Specifically in the small group section. There's your Harlem Shake there, which is fun. Then you have that princess moment. We isolate it. We do a lot of a squat or a second position, spread out leg position with a really deep bend in the knees with an isolation that happens in the torso. That's a fun fingerprint we're seeing with 1 mil. That's really cool. Arms go up, down. We rotate it in. Little party moment. People come back up. It was interesting how just this side was the only side that partied alongside the center group except for everybody else. Let's see if I noticed that correctly. We run, tap, tap. Yeah, so that's just something I noticed there that can affect the clarity of the dynamic. But once again, that's at the preference of how people determine what your dynamics are, right? So we V-step. We've entertained the scuff around the pot of berets where it's similar in that, but it's not the same. So it just looks similar. So we have a small group, not quite the cleanest. So I like the change of our dynamic. Our texture is fun. Is it readable? I don't think it projects as successfully there in this moment. And then we end up having a fun pose posture moment with the lean out, bring it back in. This moment here, I think this is probably the best section when it comes to authenticity and technique that they did in this round. So this right here with the add-on, do I wish that we had way more of this? Yes. So the walk forwards are nice. I like the poses. That's gorgeous. I wish we kept going with that. It feels very short because it's a beautiful style that showcases your feature pretty well, but others held their own pretty decently on that. Do I think that we had more room to have the entire team do a unison whacking section? I think that would have been really helpful to that score, specifically the technique and authenticity one. That would have possibly have gotten them a head up over Jam Republic. But you have to remember too, as a side note, the judges don't judge in comparison to the teams. They judge the team to the criteria. I know that's what they're taught, because I know that that's what Arnell has stated, where it's, as much as it comes across like, what were the judges thinking? They were serving your teams. They're serving the teams by doing the best they can to make decisions on these categories for the team, not comparing 1 mil to 1 mil past. The only area that you could measure that would have to be creativity, because they've already saturated us in a choreography composition earlier on, so it's going to not be as creative the second go around. That would be the only category, personally, that I'm noticing that they could do that with. So that's why I will do a bit of a comparison, but not in the sense of, don't assume that it's the judges are doing that, because they're not. And I'm doing it because I know you are, right? And I'm trying to provide just a different perspective if you think the exact opposite of me. I love being able to spark discussion and also help people understand what they're watching a little bit better. And that's kind of the goal always. And so if I'm more confusing, I'm sorry. I always try to be better. The ponies are fun there. Some of us really have fun projection. And I like the drop down on that, which is cool. The grabs there with the press is fun. This whole section is really nice. And then we also had somebody lingering out on stage. So they end up having it with the split. It does give the impression that we have transitions going in and out, which they scored pretty decently on in their staging. So what could give them a leg up on their staging? Continuing to have people come in, instead of just doing, you know, a mirror-like transition, which is what we've already kind of seen, even though it's a different content. So they travel it forward, they toss it. Some toss it, some don't. I'd say spacing absolutely can improve there. They rotate it with a knock-up, so all that's really fun. So it's a lot of unison even here. So the more that you are in unison, the more that you are risking people having to look at you with a fine-tooth comb. Are you all matching? And that is Cleanliness 101. So you have that princess and you have that with the little curtsy. I thought that was fun. And we congratulate 1 mil for making it into the top 3 to get some points on the board. We always appreciate that. So I would say, looking at their specific score sheet here, some areas that I really think they are in the right direction on. I think their whacking section, expanding on that, could have been really, really cool. As well as they have some members who can do hand performance and tutting. So pulling a Spella almost and having some whacking and tutting can up your complexity significantly, which they already have a pretty decent place to start on that. That can up that, but it can also help your technique and authenticity as well. On the athletic side, I like the usage of the different groups. I do think with the kip up, he saved it pretty well, but always whenever you're doing anything athletic, does it justify the style and the culture and community? It's not just how cool of a trick it is. It's, does it match what you're currently doing in context, which we're noticing in some cases teams are doing that in that way, and some are doing it in more of a projection way or a performance way that can help on fan vote. So it can be helpful in some places, but there are other things you can substitute for it to be helpful in other places too. So good job, 1 mil. I'm excited to see what you guys bring to Sydney. Okay, we're here with Jam Republic. So they ended up taking second place. And side note, if you didn't know, if you've noticed that both in the New York series and in the Vancouver series, if you're curious why the order is what it is, it's because they're going in the point order. Regardless if you remove them from their round 1 matches, what is their actual points? And that determines, they go from the group that scored the lowest in the top 3 and then up to the first place. So we're going to go ahead, chat about Jam. Sorry. Before we do that, what are areas that they scored the highest in? Looks like they scored really high in stamina. They scored high in projection. They scored high in musicality, which is great. And then they scored in the upper 8s in cleanliness. So I, like I mentioned in the live stream, am not surprised whatsoever at the cleanliness and clarity that Jam Republic has. I think a big component is the simple fact that they were together longer and they had enough time to let it sit and stew, and they had their defined numbers. They have their full 20. They have their captain there. And I think a lot of that really can play a role in the synergy of the group to where they can really show up and show out in this place and in this way. So we have some subtle head going in. We ball change it. Tension going in on that is nice. The shoulder's fun with the knock. We cross uncross, the body roll. I like the fingers on that. We drop it down. Bounces are great, and we swim it. Really cool. That's also great. We have the head. We send it around with a knock, hit it, more tension out of it. So we're dealing with a really, not really slow, it is a lot slower in your music. Why do I bring that up more than once? It is because when you're dealing with a slower BPM, you have to compensate or supplement in a different way compared to a higher, faster BPM. Because if you're making your movements faster, how do they fit in reference to your musicality if you don't have a timbre, a tonal color, an instrument in play that allows for those movements to happen, so it doesn't just look like you're just throwing stuff in it for the sake of throwing it in for complexity, right? So I really like that you have it more of a popcorn effect look with the levels. You have the isolated wave. So we have good tension, nice body roll out of it. So something that I'm still noticing quite a lot more here, I would say they absolutely showcase immense improvement in this area from New York. It's going to be the cleanliness specifically in the torsos. So that's something I think there's a certain section that we'll really be able to tell, but we'll talk about that later. So you have the isolations. We got complexity, which is interesting that they didn't get awarded for it in the same way that One Mill did or Brotherhood did. Let me see if I can pinpoint why. I think one component I would say is that BPM. So there's more limited opportunity. Then we end up accenting it out. I like this blue mint onion effect there. And then you have your featured in the back. Then you have this love. So they're playing around with fun timings, which makes sense why they scored higher on the musicality. Because even the song itself is not a typical showcase of movement to the respective track. You have that Love in This Club, the shoulders are fun. You have the A, the toss is nice, the ball changes are fun. Then you have tension there with the torso. They hit it high in the middle, then it drops there. Now, let's talk about this. Their spacing can absolutely improve. I do think they encountered very similar cases of what we saw with One Mill, where you have one group that's more condensed and another group more spread out, even though they're doing the same thing, right? Some of us aren't even fully committing to it. Could it be just a directional thing? I'm sure it could be that. Then they're melting out of it, which I like that they're responding to the trio. Trio drops down. It looks great. So it looks like we have 3 different perspectives of movement, if that makes sense, which can that help in, how we're choosing to interpret the overall concept? Sure, but can that cost you some points in the cleanliness department? Yes. So this section, unfortunately, is not the cleanest. That helps them in those categories. I love this moment happening over here on stage left. You don't get to see that whenever you are watching from the close-up cam. I love that, but the speed change is cool. Great way to introduce another person onto the stage. The speed change ripple around. Notice here we are ending up through the quantity of people as well as these types of choices bleeding out without having complexity in our polyrhythm through delegation, which is what I've called and talked about. I think that's what cost them some points in the complexity department, this section here. So if they were curious about that, I would say the beginning was really nice and dense, but we didn't have that complement here. The running out, I thought was fine. Do we have any creative transitions? Not quite here. Let me see. We end up having some intricacy going in, but that punch, notice that punch had some different directions going in and how it was being pushed out. It's very similar in the case that we noticed with One Mill. To bring it through. So I like the feature. He's cool. Love it. The double tour. We stand a double tour. He did great. And I love the clarity and the transition of that. And we push around. So we're still creating a speed change moment, which is really nice. But no, for a good bit, we've been kind of doing this from 111 to 129. That's at least 15 seconds of not a ton of complexity going in. And you only got, between 2 minutes and 30 seconds, 3 minutes? Right? Come on, little forward roll. So we end up doing a connection going in there. Then we said, hello, we're here. We accent, send it around. And then we end up dropping down. There's your melts. Then we end up consolidating in our staging, which I think is pretty nice. It's a fun creative choice where we're all creating a nice, unified front. Is it balanced? I would say to a degree, yes, but it does look like some of our members have a lot of synergy in this press back or this pulse, and others I don't think are really are showcasing that, or it's easier to see them not do that. Running up, not as creative of a choice. Then we have a breaking section, which I really like. Then some of us are off on our timing, but we can appreciate the style and the choice. I would say the fact that they have this section here is what got them to the points they had, similarly to 1 mil having their whacking section. Right? It's fun, but we have an isolated group where we have members on the side just waiting, very similarly to what we noticed with 1 mil, where we're kind of just off to the side, hiding behind the LED screen, right? So we end up switching. So we have some complexity going in with our choices, how we come up. It's nice. We're not finished out of it. Do we finish with the freeze? We drop it down. That, hold on, let me look at it again. He goes through that. It kind of gives the impression that he wasn't supposed to roll out of it like that. Or maybe he was. I don't know. But I would say the note that I would give that similarly to 1 million in the kip up and having to compensate, that gave a similar impression where there could be a chance where we were going from a handstand to an elbow freeze, but it just connected too much and just turned into a roll out, and we just had to compensate in our position. I would say more clarity and more control through that choice, I think, could be very helpful in providing clarity there and cleanliness there, and it can contribute more positively to the authenticity and technique score. So that would be my note through there. So this, I really appreciate the intention of this. I do think when I watch this, some of us, our balance could absolutely improve. You can see some people are wavering on it. It does give the impression we had a lot of clarity whenever we have people stop. And then when it got to about right here, this feature, right, let me go back so we can actually see it. So it goes hit, then they keep going, they go through. Now he's supposed to have his own little moment, right? But because others were moving, it kind of looked like he was losing his balance too. Right? So I wonder if having more clarity in that feature before we broke it back out, I think that could have read dynamically way more, which could have contributed more positively to their staging score. So we end up dropping it down. That was nice. It's a little step touch. Notice here, it's a bit of a simple transition. And even the melts and the speed change there. So I do think when you have a slow BPM, as somebody who loves choreographing to it, I have many, many receipts that show my preference is absolutely in the contemporary realm, slow BPMs and sounds and instruments that exist that have these lulls and this depth to it. What you run into is a lot of times you want to sink and melt and exist in it. But what category is going to be affected? Complexity. Complexity doesn't always mean polyrhythmic. It means does the move itself require a certain degree of competency in order to do it? That's where stylistic athleticism comes in, is it does compensate for certain movements that may come across simple in nature, that may not score well in complexity, but can absolutely score well in stylistic athleticism because of the demand that it requires the body to do, right? So those do go hand in hand to a degree, I would think. There's your love. So the pull through is fun in this club. Does it give an impression of we're doing one long combo, and it does look like we're a bit smushed on our stage? Could we have expanded, really played around with this accordion-like choice in, transitioning through content, not just transitioning through running or transitioning through a speed change, right? So you have that love, so we reestablished that, just a different posture. So even here, some people, like 2 people, expanded this out. And then we end up walking, and then we have 2 come in. I do appreciate the mirroring of the 2 coming in there. So we pull. I like the tension on it. It's nice, but I would say that's the biggest area of opportunity that they left for others, was the area where we are hitting our music in a great way. The body roll was nice with the drop down. It's great. So on musicality, they're exploring interesting ways, either through their remix, as well as how they're interpreting that said remix. They're establishing certain sounds that we may not be familiar with the respective track. So it allows us to have a refreshment of a visual representation of what the track sounds like, right? It doesn't have that type of predictability based on what we can normally be saturated in when people choose to interpret this track, is my point. And then we toss it away, we hit it high-low, and then we have a melt. This is really nice. We appreciate that. The twinkling's nice. Some of our range can improve. Some of us are choosing to have a pulse of the chest on that, which I don't mind. Some of us are leaning in different directions compared to our counterparts, so that would be an area of improvement for cleanliness. Looking to the side is great. We wave it through. Here's the part, actually. If you look over on stage right, if you watch 99, I believe 7, I think 7's Denzel, right? We've seen Denzel in the battle scene, which is really fun to see him explore different styles here. He twinkles through. You're going to notice at number 99, we're able to wave and have a lot of clarity in the chest. Denzel keeps it more internal, which is fine if you're working as individuals, but because this is it's supposed to be a unison section, that can work against you. I remember touching on this exact point with Jam Republic in the New York series. So the torso cleanliness, if they're wanting to figure out how to be even cleaner and get that score on cleanliness even higher, absolutely think about what's going on in the chest and the torso. That is the hardest part to clean, and I say this so often when we look at dance. The wave out is fun. I do appreciate that we got the fingers showcased in the waving, because with waving, if you don't use the fingers, it's an incomplete wave. And so I appreciate that we even have it down to the comma, the period of the fingers. The turn to face the back is fun. And then we point up. Also, if you notice, they have a similar instance with their jerseys. Some of us are making individual choices, which I think is cool, but can the, restricting the jersey, depending on the cut, can that affect the range of how your outfits look when you're doing a unison section? Yes, which is why you see a lot of teams, if you look outside of IDL, they opt for the same outfit, because they have the same range choices of how the garment lays on the body and how your body does the movement, right? So that's why, you would see that, which is a component that I actually really like about the IDL, is that that's one less thing to worry about, but also you have to compensate in creativity in a different way outside of your costuming that sometimes can really help in that. So all in all, with Jam, what are areas that they're doing really well? I think whenever they're able to be together and practice, they understand how to be clean. So I really appreciate that. I think they know how to project too. They did a really good job of that. And I'm excited to talk about their round one, because I really do think that they showcased that, at least from the front cams, you could really feel it. This was cool to see explored. And then area of opportunity, I would say specifically when you're dealing with tracks like this, or whenever you're dealing within the cleanliness, is something that we're seeing them really do well to improve that even further, using that torso or cleaning the torsos, but also I would say finding more creative moments through your complexity, through tracks that may not have a lot to work with, that can really help your creativity even more though. So this was really nice. Great job, Jam. And once again, congratulations for making it into the top 3. Okay, Brotherhood time. We're going to go from the top here. Now, they scored pretty high in a lot of categories. That's kind of a consistent theme we've noticed with them. And what I did is I went ahead and wrote down which teams or which particular sets, depending on the round, scored the absolute highest based on this criteria with this panel of judges. And I know a lot of you guys, myself included, are like, man, I really wish that we could have the original audio for the round 1 wide cam, but that's what they're fixing right now. That's why we're only doing round 2. But if this helps at all, the musicality, the highest score was the round 2 from Brotherhood, where we do have the original music. So we get to see the highest score, what that looks like here with this panel. And it looks like with this particular set, they scored the highest in complexity out of all the teams, the highest in musicality, the highest in creativity. They split in stylistic athleticism with their first round. They got the exact same score in GRV in the very first round too. So that was a really competitive one there. They also, I think out of that, those are all with round 2 set that scored the highest. But that's still very commendable that they were able to be competitive in that way. So we're going to dive through it. What are some areas that they do really well? The things that I had mentioned. They know how to project. They have really good stamina. The presentation of the remix of the percussion, I think, really helps in establishing complexity from the jump, but still clarity, because they're using movements and stylized choices that match the in-sync flair or the era of the time to be productive, but also match your criteria, right? which I find to be really fun. So that's what helps in the musicality side. You have the ah, even noticing there when they're all going ah, it's individualized, but what is all clean and clear? The dynamic of the body and how they're choosing to speed change up. So that would be the biggest suggestion for all teams. And I would even continue to say, Brotherhood, continue to press into that too, where if you're wanting to showcase individuality, make sure that certain components are very, very clear and readable so we can appreciate the individual and not, assume or make that guess that the reason why you're individual is because you're not clean, but we can see that you're clean and you're intentionally making a choice to showcase those elements to grow in those criteria. So the punch through is fun. I do think their remix really helps. You have the level, they reset it in, the knock of the head is fun, airtime is great, their range is really nice. I do think some of our members, I'm gonna see, was it number 21? Let me look. Number 21 had more restrictiveness in the torso, so it did influence the range choice in how it chose to send it off. Does that matter in the long run? I think it matters if a judge catches that. I have it at 0.6, just like I noticed it with 1 mil, and I noticed it with Jam Republic. Yes. When you see those types of discrepancies, it really depends. Your judge can see X amount at a certain amount of time. And same for you as an audience. There may be, you catch those little details and sometimes you may not. And for us at home, whenever it's streamed, we get a front cam shot. So there's obviously some things that will not show up unless it's in the wide cam, right? So you can only make the best judgment based on what you're seeing. So they press it back. So I see why, if you're looking here, the spacing is a bit off between the members here and the members here. And I would say part of that could be because of the size of the stage and calibrating the routine to it, just like you would with the other teams, but very in the similar cases, which is probably why all teams score the exact same in spacing, is that you have similar discrepancies. But you notice how the spacing, you could still score really high in other areas, even though your spacing's off, right? So they toss it through, send it around, little step touch. It is a bit on the simple side over there, but I do appreciate you notice what they're doing. They're not off stage. They're on the side. Is it better for them to be on stage and doing the bare minimum or being off stage and doing nothing? I would say this is the better choice, right? And you can see in the score it reflects that. That's something that Brotherhood has done for many, many years, is because they've always been a team with a smaller quantity of numbers in their respective circuits. They would normally keep everybody on stage or very rarely have somebody go off. And I think that really works well with that kind of structure here. So you have that boy band moment with the little boxer bounce, the press down with tension is nice. So you have your small group. Polyrhythm through delegation is what this is called. And that I've said that other teams have done this well depending on the circuit or depending on the routine. But in the case here, they're the only team that actually has done this in the second round. And I think they absolutely got rewarded for it in the staging. And they got rewarded for it in other areas because you had quantity. That's something that a lot of people miss, is that you want to have as many people being competent in a thing as possible because it helps with the captivation quality of it too. The Running Man is nice, but it's also complex and polyrhythmic. We switch it up in the levels. I like the moment here where you have a feature going in, but he doesn't take away from the next group coming up. So that was a good transition. This is a nice choice where he hits it, and depending on where he punches, there's a drop. So you got to see this leave such a bigger impact on the feature because he's influencing the people behind him instead of just being a feature. So I like the contributing factor of that, which I really appreciate. We send it around, press it back to the heart, and then you have the head. Arm swing is also nice. The kick is great. Arm swing is also fun there. So we knock it. So we're still having the feature, but notice it doesn't last longer than an 8 count, and he's still, creating this push and pull effect with other dynamics and textures going in. So that turns into a cannon. We rotate around, but not everybody did that. Notice they just catered to a different direction. They pushed it out, we point, and then we're running forward. Notice these runs were all committed. We're not overly individualized. We have an individual pose, but we're matching dynamic and we're matching position as we move, so there's still clarity and structure, even though everyone's making their own choice. So this is all really nice. There's your old school hip hop social scene, party dance scene here. It's way more clear. Love the add-on. Some airtime could absolutely improve. The Running Man, notice that we maintain some spacing, but our spacing is a little bit off. It's more conjoined here. Or actually, it could just be our vantage point too. So we end up swinging the arms around. We punch it with the clap. It's also nice. So send it through. All that with a RoboCop, right? A lot of social dance involved. The hop is great. Now notice this. I'm going to say this is a really good example of done really well, is what we're about to see. They still have the song, but notice what happens in the track. They're going to involve timbres. What is a timbre? It is sound contact. So it's not just what sound am I hearing, it's using the adjectives to describe it, right? So I'm not hearing just a boom. What kind of boom? How does it resolve? How loud is it? What kind of room is it in, right? That's timbre. And whenever you think about instrumentation, it has to deal with what kind of instrument are you using? What kind of sound are you using? Which is why tonal color, timbre, and instrumentation could go really hand in hand when you talk about musicality. So this was what really helped them score high in that area, is because, as well as technique and authenticity, I think is their choices here. Because if you note, what sounds, if you listen to music, music matters just as much as the dance. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. The dance and the music go hand in hand. Why? The music was first. Before any of these scenes or cultures and communities, had these techniques and had this vocab. They had movement. That was a response to the music. So whenever you're looking at a section like this, because you're about to look at popping, what sounds do they have in play? They have sounds that exist in popping tracks that would normally have your body respond in the way that is popping and boogaloo, right? Because you notice that popping and boogaloo have different songs and discographies. They can share similar ones compared to whacking or house or hip hop or crump or breaking, right? There's similarities in music. However, you can clearly hear the differences if you listen to enough of it, right? All that to say, this I would say is a good example of why they scored high in technique and authenticity as well as musicality, because of how they remix this section. I really want to, you hear what I mean? You have that little that gives you time, that gives you the sound envelope, that not maybe not the sound envelope, but it gives you that space that the sound exists in for that particular BPM to do that pop. It hits in that way. Does that make sense? And I like that you still have people on stage. You never just have a group in isolation. I would say the only time is our band. And does everybody else stay on stage? I even think then too. So they bring it in, they wave it up. Notice that was a vibration, bringing it in, they double it, boom, boom. So then they end up having tuts. Notice the clarity, even the folds, they're not just creating the same go-to foldovers. They're going, even switching up the technique or the texture, or I would say the dynamic, going from, something really crisp to something really smooth. Two different techniques in one, right? It's really nice. And then from there, they accent, and then they're still going, right? And then, so they're still in their boogalooing bag. Spacing could improve over there on that stage, right? But now we're going into the Campbell locking. Do I see out of the two styles, which one do I think that they're doing more successfully? I think I see more area of opportunity in the Campbell locking over the popping. But the popping, you normally have in the portfolio so many different dynamics that exist within it, or different subgenres or sub-styles in it, like waving and tutting and strutting just off the top. There's so much more, right? Go be curious about this kind of stuff. But there's a lot of area of opportunity under these kind of techniques you would normally see under that style whenever you see it in the communal space. In Campbell locking, the vocabulary, I would say it's a bit trickier to innovate, because in the land of how you see the differences between how popping has been innovated over the years and Campbell locking. If you just study the trends of it, popping you've seen a lot more in comparison to Campbell locking. Is that true across the board? No. Just based on my personal observations, I've seen that. So you're going to see a lot of notable things, but I would say some of our choices in our upper body or in our groove of it, it does look like from some of our members, not everybody, some of our members, it looks like we're just doing choreography or doing Campbell locking movement compared to understanding the essence of Campbell locking, right? Could it be because we don't have assisted timbres or assisted music in this section like we did for the popping? Maybe. Don't know. I'm not saying it's everybody. I'm just noticing some of our guys. Can that affect it? And I would say the range is a little bit different too. The turn, like even there, like not everybody had the same kind of positioning with the elbow. And then also going into the split. Let's talk about this. So I always hope that when people do this, and it doesn't matter if I'm being honest, because I'm using this as an example, it doesn't matter even if you've done this 1,000 times. I've seen people get hurt doing this, right? Especially when you're dealing with onset fatigue. A great example is I'm going to give M&A Soak and Quants. They had their leader do that exact thing. And he unfortunately got hurt on stage, right? So that is something where it's like when you're doing those kind of things, I appreciate that. I would say that's a really great choice for stylistic athleticism. But I want you guys to take note on, like, I'm always wanting to advocate for dancers. And I really hope that when it comes to teams like Brotherhood, especially teams like Brotherhood who don't have anybody past 20. They have 20 people on their roster. They don't have anybody more than that. If you look, compared to every other team, I think they're the only one. These are the same guys you're going to see at every single series, which is cool, but also it's even riskier when you're dealing with stylistic athleticism choices like this, where I have seen in a professional dance space, people who are so competent at their craft still get hurt from it. So I'm really hopeful that by the fatigue that ends up happening, right, the stamina that is being tested in all of these routines, I'm hopeful for every single team. It's just a PSA. I really hope that we're being mindful whenever we rehearse these routines. Pick choices that are, you can do very well even when you're fatigued, right? So by the looks of this, it looks like he's able to do it pretty good. So he looks great there, which is good. So we appreciate that. But that's just something that just reminded me specifically because I saw it happen in this season on a professional dance league. All right, spacing could absolutely improve here. You see number 10, Scott stand out just a smidge. So I love that. I absolutely love that because of the height, and I even love the little nuance of, oh, I got this really good. I would say out of the two things, that one looks significantly more comfortable for him to do compared to the split. If that's the same guy, not sure. I don't know if that's true, but based on how we did it and got in and out of it, that's just how it felt. And that's fine. So we hit, great timing there, point it down. I like that U, and then back. So they have the back, they're moving backwards. So that was fun. And then we have our moment here. Are we going to have gimmicky moments like this in all of our rounds? We had the fitness one from the New York series. We have a band here. So I wonder if that's going to be something that is a choice that Brotherhood chooses to do. I think they do it in almost every single set, which I think is kind of fun. And it's absolutely helps in the area of creativity. So notice, even here, guys, they haven't left the stage. If anybody's left, it's very minimal. They go high to low, really nice. They press it to the inside. We did struggle on stability, but he made it work. He didn't fall. I like that we're all pulling. We're like, oh my gosh, it's number 15. The kiss is great because what happens? The feature causes a response from the rest of the dancers. It's great. Then we crowd serve to get him down. It looks like that wasn't the cleanest ascension, but also it's, a circumstance. Everybody's had a hiccup or two, right? We pick our battles there. We go into a round off. Backflip. Did that help their score for stylistic athleticism? I personally don't think so because it's not in context of any cultural or community or style, but I do think the other tricks that we saw do because of the styles that they were doing at the time, like that split or the alpha kick sequence that we saw too that had the 3 people. That helps in that area because Campbell locking has those key elements and components that you normally see in the community. So I like from there, we're all pressing. We all have different positions. We're all going to turn, different poses. We added in. Spacing could improve. I'd say this is the least clean section that they've had. Send it around. I think part of it is because of what's going on in the head. Some people are using their chest and their head as a lingering choice and others are not. And that's where you can sometimes turn it into a muddled situation. But that's, it's pretty minimal because you are having this team in, they're not compared to the other teams. They're compared to the criteria, but when you see each team to the respective criteria, they have more minimal lack of cleanliness choices compared to others, and I think it's because their complexity in other areas compensate for that. So we bring it up, really nice with the chest. Some of our guys, unfortunately, didn't have a lot of clarity there, so I do stand behind. This is the least clean section. Some of us have some range. We are a little bit off here. We knock it out. I can tell when we're getting tired what's the first thing to go, your torso. So I'm gonna say number 97. I am noticing that. I noticed it back in the Campbell locking section as well. But I did notice it in the beginning, so if you were doing it all the way around, I just noticed you in the second half. Right. So in stamina, that could be a reason why their stamina compared to the first round. I haven't seen the first round wide shot, so I can't verify this. It could be a reason as to why they scored lower here is because this last section is not as clean in comparison to the beginning of it. And a lot of times that can be a really good bookend correlation to how, whether or not the projection or the intensity or the cleanliness and clarity, are those the same across the board? That's going to equate into a significantly higher level stamina score. But the fact that their stamina score is still really high, it shows that their energy and their projection is, really, really full, but their cleanliness, I think, is the area that cost them some points. And the accent in through, toss around is fun. The kick is nice. Boom. I really like how syncopated that is. Dum 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 dum, where the percussion comes in. It's an interruption to the typical way that we hear the song. It's really nice. I love that. So they also earned points of the creativity of the fact that they were impressioning, in sync. Yeah, they bring it in. And the fact they were able to do that with a double turn out of that, with a fun pose, bringing it in. And then they turn it around the back. Not quite the cleanest turn to the back, but it was a tricky way to get into it. So I appreciate the musicality risk. Also, the fact that we were able to really feel through the movement quality, regardless if we could see, right? And we're going to touch on this a lot in round 1 between the Brotherhood and GRV matchup because we've got a lot of Easter eggs in that one to dive into. Whether or not NSYNC choreographies, you could see the essence of the time period in which NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, Britney Spears, the pop era with the dancers and how the choreography was structured for pop music in America. You see that replicated here, but you see it in a Brotherhood flair, but also matching criteria. Does that make sense? And I think that helps contribute to the musicality, and it contributed to creativity. And they used accessories, but they didn't compromise any other things because they can't compromise any other factors like their jersey or, they maybe could on their pants. But the point being, I really like the fact that you could get taken back to that era because of how they chose to physically showcase it through the pantomiming gesture choices, but also in their posture, in execution, and their style choices. I think that could be a reason why they scored as high as they did in those categories. So all in all, do we appreciate, do we respect, do we enjoy these routines? Absolutely. I have nothing but respect for these teams, especially as we're seeing a lot of teams make their appearance in round 2 on multiple series, not just with Brotherhood. I expect it with other teams as well. I expect there to be a creative fatigue regardless of the amount of time, right? Because I remember on a podcast with Brotherhood, I'm trying to look at behind the scenes more with the teams to understand more context before going into the reviews. They had mentioned that, having to come up with concepts, dealing with the music issues. Brotherhood has had so many music issues this season, so I'm really thankful that they're still able to provide a great product despite that. My point in all of this, I'm going to just make this as a really quick summary. I'm really proud of these teams, and I know navigating with 20 people to create a high-level performance on a criteria like this in the time period that we have is so difficult to do, and I have nothing but respect for them, right? And I'm excited to be in this position to be a helpful aid, and I want every team to be successful, and I want every team to do their best at every single series, because at the end of the day, it's a celebration of the art of dance, it's a celebration of culture, community, and the celebration of actually advocating for dance in the way that it deserves, right? So I'm excited to hear y'all's thoughts. As soon as the Brotherhood wide cam for round 1 comes out, you can expect the wide cam perspective of round 1. This will also be on Instagram. I don't know what format I'll do in it, but it'll be a good time. I'm Jess. You know me, I know you, and I will catch you on the flip side. Bye.